You're watching Council Wrap-Up for the month of March. A look at some of the top news of the Montgomery County Council. Up first, the fiscal year 2020 operating budget has been released and now is in the hands of the County Council. We got reaction on this $5.7 billion proposal. The executive's budget includes a $51 million increase in funding for Montgomery County Public Schools, adds funding to the county reserves, and doesn't raise taxes. Council President Nancy Navarro says at first look she is pleased with the proposal, and the council will carefully work to make sure it balances the needs of all county residents.
I want to thank the county executive and his staff for working so hard to put together a budget that I think reflects many of our shared priorities. I do want to commend that he has held the line on taxes and that he has kept our promise to reach the 10% goal for reserves. This is a very important promise that we have made and a very important target for us. I do want to say that, of course, we're going to now begin our work here on the County Council through committees, and we're going to look at issues of, for example, sustainability. We're obviously going to look very carefully at the negotiated agreements.
Police and fire and emergency services will get more than $650 million under the Elridge proposal. The budget also includes an increase for health and human services and transportation. Funding for Montgomery County Public Schools was below what it requested, and Elridge's budget decreases funding to Montgomery College. Councilmember Craig Rice chairs the Education Committee. He says this initial proposal is concerning.
Absolutely. While we know that we want to try and pay our employees more money, it's actually unfortunate that the county executive structured his budget in such a way that it actually pits our unions and them getting additional funding against us really having to really try and focus on funding our educational systems, both K through 12 as well as higher ed. And so we're going to have to do some tough work now in trying to balance those two priorities, understanding that we can't make money, and so to achieve a balanced budget, something's going to have to give.
The council will begin public hearings on the budget April 8th. Follow this link to sign up to testify. County leaders held a press conference in Silver Spring to kick off plans for enacting a racial equity and social justice policy for Montgomery County government. County leaders stood together at the Silver Spring Civic Building to kick off the creation of a racial equity and social justice policy for Montgomery County government. Council President Nancy Navarro is leading the charge on this effort, and it comes not only from a political standpoint, but from the personal perspective as a Montgomery County resident.
Very soon I discovered that in this amazing place, there were some things that we needed to work on. There were disparities that also existed here in this place that I considered to be a model. And very soon I realized that there's more than meets the eye.
This group wants residents to share their thoughts with county leaders on how we can build a county that meets the needs of all its residents.
So I'm really happy that we've decided to engage in this work, to be in a place in America where everybody is on the same page and has a commitment to trying to get this right. This is a special place. Montgomery County, special in a lot of ways. This is one way that I really appreciate. We can do the right thing here, and we can do that in the community that generally accepts it.
The event was full of inspiring, eloquent words from members of the County Council, as well as leaders from Montgomery College.
Equity training that we did was very moving, and it meant a lot to me.
The County Planning Department, and Montgomery County Public Schools speaking on behalf of youth in Montgomery County.
Today I come with a call to action and ask to all of you to include youth in this conversation, because it is exhausting to go to school in a place where you walk into an honors class and people don't think you belong there. It is exhausting to go to school in a place where none of your teachers look like you. And it is exhausting to go to school in a place where the curriculum that you're learning from is written by your former oppressors.
I am convinced that unless we have a framework and unless we have legislation that mandates us to look at the data carefully and really truly consider and have deliberations that look at whether our decisions are going to exacerbate or whether they are going to close these disparities, we will be here 30 years from now.
The Council's Public Safety Committee met to discuss a bill that would improve transparency in the case of an officer-involved death.
Until there's a public accounting of what happens in the case of a police-involved death, there will always be doubt and there will always be distrust.
The bill would require an independent investigation of an officer-involved death by at least 2 investigators with experience in conducting complex criminal inquiries. Those investigators must be employed by a local, state, or federal law enforcement agency located outside of Montgomery County.
We need to say with a strong voice that independent police investigations and independent prosecutions are a priority for us.
Justice for Robert White! Justice for Robert White!
The impetus for the Law Enforcement Trust and Transparency Bill comes after the death of Silver Spring resident Robert White, who was shot dead by a county police officer last June. The investigation into White's death was conducted by county police officers and then forwarded to the Howard County State's Attorney, who decided not to press charges. Montgomery County Police Chief Tom Manger says he is in favor of an independent investigation, but has some concerns about oversight and some of the bill's legalities.
None of us, and I think that Mr. Juanda would agree with me, none of us want a deficient investigation, something less than what we get now. We want the best investigation that can be done, so if my intent is trying to get us there and give this the investigation itself as much independent review, as much independence and oversight as we can possibly get without diminishing the effectiveness and the professionalism and the accuracy of the investigation itself.
Councilmember Juando says overall the county police department conducts itself with professionalism.
Montgomery County has a great police department. Our police officers are professional, they're dedicated, and highly trained.
But the limited information during the Robert White investigation left many unanswered questions.
And Montgomery County leads in a lot of areas. We've done it in other legislation that years later is adopted by the state or considered by the state. And it's important to point out that all of the logistical issues that were mentioned by the chief would be in place even if you had a statewide entity doing it. Figuring out who deploys to the scene, who's responsible for what, who's the lead investigator. All those things are issues that would have to be figured out in any scenario, whether it's a state or a county to county. And so I think we need to move forward.
It puts us in a little bit of a concern. There's a concern that in Montgomery County, that since we're dealing with asking an outside agency, Montgomery County doesn't have the authority to say, other county, please help us out. We'll help you out. You help us out. So that's another concern. And then there's budgetary and all those things that need to be worked out.
Currently, Illinois, Utah, and Wisconsin require outside investigations in cases involving the use of force by an officer. The council's Public Safety Committee will continue with its discussion on the bill before it's brought before the council.
So I'm hopeful that, again, that independence and transparency will lead to more citizen involvement, and we can find more formal ways to get them involved down the line.
Councilmember Tom Hucker held a press conference to discuss details of a bill he's introduced that tightens restrictions on lead levels in the drinking water in Montgomery County Public Schools. Councilmember Tom Hucker held a press conference to discuss his latest bill, which would remediate high lead levels in the drinking water in Montgomery County Public Schools. Councilmember Hucker introduced the legislation after more than 200 water fountains in Montgomery County Public Schools tested at levels above the state requirement.
The council is going to make a number of important policy decisions this year, but I can't think of anything more important and more urgent than putting a stop to permanent, irreversible brain damage to our children. Lead is known to cause lower IQ, hyperactivity, slowed growth, hearing problems, hypertension, and anemia.
Hucker's bill would restrict lead levels at public schools from 20 parts per billion to 5 parts per billion. During testing, lead levels in the drinking water in some county schools were as high as 500 parts per billion.
Second, Montgomery County, as all of you know, has agreed to apply an equity lens to our decision making. So it's important that we address the inequity between our wealthier schools and our high poverty schools. Data from the testing that was done already in our schools showed that some of the highest poverty schools were found to have some of the highest lead ratings.
Maryland's mandated testing discovered that many of the schools with a large number of outlets with higher level of leads were located in communities with the greatest numbers of families living in poverty. These schools serve our most at-risk children. It is unacceptable to expose these students to yet another factor that could negatively impact their learning.
A bill at the state level sponsored by former teacher and Montgomery County delegate Jared Solomon passed unanimously in the House. The measure passed 137-0.
Is our bill at the state level has a year implementation window. It doesn't go into effect until 2020. We have been blessed in Montgomery County with a school system that has really been at the forefront of the lead testing. We finished our lead testing really before almost any other jurisdiction in the state, and so it's critical that Montgomery County move immediately to protect our students.
The council is set to vote on the measure later this month. In the meantime, Councilmember Hucker has asked staff from parks, recreation, and libraries to submit budget proposals to test their drinking fountains. And finally, District 1 Councilmember Andrew Friedman met for coffee with residents of his district to discuss issues of importance to them. Being accessible to his constituents is one of the top priorities of Councilmember Andrew Friedman. And in keeping with that theme, the District 1 representative held his first casual Fridays with Friedman event at Tally Ho Restaurant in Potomac.
First, thank you for doing this. It's really nice to have an opportunity to talk to you directly.
It was an opportunity for his constituents to talk informally with Friedman about their concerns and his plans for his term. The discussion touched on several different areas: transportation.
I go to Virginia every week to visit my grandkids, and it's backed up at 2 o'clock. Total gridlock coming in Montgomery County. Really, the question that I'm seeing is that Montgomery County is taking the perspective that all transportation investments should be in transit.
We can't pave our way with roads to solve all of these challenges.
Oversight in county government.
I believe that oversight is one of the 3 core functions of what we do. We pass a budget, we provide oversight. That's what every legislature does. Everything else is a bonus.
Aging in place.
I think the council needs to focus on measures that make it friendly to people to age in place.
We have a program called Design for Life, which is a program from the county that allows you to make improvements with county support, basically getting some financial support.
And also issues surrounding racial equity.
I was struck by your sensitivity to institutional racism.
We have a challenging past, like many others do, and you can't move forward unless you know where you've been. That in every policy that we make, we should be considering the impact on racial disparities of our policies.
The topic sparked important conversation, but there were times when Friedman was able to bring a laugh to the serious nature of his job.
We have the oldest demographic district in Montgomery County. You don't look it, by the way. You look great.
Fridays with Friedman will continue throughout the year. For more information on when you can catch up with the council member next, visit his webpage. Well, that does it for this edition of Council Wrap Up. For more information about the work of the County Council, you can visit their website.